In many parts of the world, one of the most beloved days of the year is the feast of St. Nicholas, celebrated December 6th. It is on that day that in many countries the children wake up to find their shoes filled with candy and sweets and fruits and other good things. In many countries it is that day, and not Christmas itself, which is the day for gift-giving. Today we hear about an entirely different saint. Not St. Nicholas, the bearer of gifts, but rather St. John the Baptist, the prophet. It was St. John who announced the coming of Jesus. It was John whom we see today pointing his finger at the religious leaders of his day and calling out to them, "You brood of vipers!" Hard words from a saint. True words from a prophet. The problem with those religious leaders was that they thought they had the answers to every question. The problem was that they left no room for doubt. They left no room for God. So certain were they of their own infallibility. Pope Francis said wisely, "If a person has the answer to all the questions, that is proof that God is not with him. That merely shows that he is a false prophet, using religion for himself." The Pope goes on to tell us, "The great leaders of the people of God, like Moses, always left room for doubt. We must always leave room for the Lord and not for our own certainty. We must be humble." Perhaps Pope Francis himself was being something of a prophet. We often think of prophets as people who foretell the future. A prophet is not someone who tells the future. A prophet is one who tells the present and tells it clearly. A prophet is one who sees clearly as with the eyes of God. A prophet is someone who dares to challenge the culture of the time and place. Or as John Ruskin put it, to see clearly is poetry, prophecy, and religion all in one. Prophets are never accepted. Their words are never welcome. John the Baptist lost his head. Jesus was crucified. Pope Francis was constantly accused of Marxism for daring to point out the injustices in society. We will be accused of much more than that. Prophets are found in every time and in every place. South Africa had one in the person of Nelson Mandela, who was able to see clearly the injustice in the society and traditions in which he lived. His country was plagued with a system known as apartheid, a legalized discrimination by which white people and black people were forcibly kept apart. The tiny white minority was given all the power of government, and the enormous black majority was allowed none. For opening the eyes of the world to these injustices, Mandela spent 27 years at hard labor in prison. Much of that time was spent at the notorious Robben prison, which I have visited. Prisoners were chained together and made to work 8 to 10 hours a day, breaking up the rocks of the limestone quarry. The glare of the sun on this white rock, together with the dust of all those years, ruined his eyes, so that by the time he was released in 1990, his tear ducts were completely destroyed, and he could no longer cry. Perhaps that was appropriate. When I visited his country shortly afterwards, apartheid, thanks to him, had fallen, and he was president of the country. I listened to the white people there making excuses to me for the unjust system they had had, claiming it was their culture, their tradition. It had been there for a long time, so it must have been all right. And we as outsiders had no right to judge their culture. Now, culture is a beautiful thing, but all too many people hide behind that word, misuse it, abuse it. Culture can be used to justify horrible things. This is not culture. This is the lack of culture. Culture is receiving gifts on St. Nicholas Day. Culture is making tamales for Christmas. Culture is lighting a menorah for Hanukkah, singing Christmas carols in December, watching fireworks displays on the 4th of July. Slavery is not culture, even if it was handed down to us by our ancestors. Apartheid, homophobia, ritual mutilation, caste systems, honor killings, oppression of women, under-the-table business dealings do not belong to someone's culture merely because these things have been accepted by many generations. This is not culture. This is sin. It is sin regardless whether these institutions stem from the individual, from the nation, or from a religious institution. It is sin regardless of how long it has been around. God gifts every age with prophets, men and women who have the courage to challenge the religious and political and social establishment, men and women who are willing to question traditions and laws and customs, which less courageous and less enlightened people continue sheepishly to follow merely because it is much easier not to challenge. A John the Baptist, a Jesus, a Mandela, a Gandhi, a Lincoln, a Dalai Lama, a Susan B. Anthony, a Francis of Assisi find the courage to point the finger at the brood of vipers who are seeking their own advancement by trampling upon others. The gift of prophecy is a powerful gift for all the world. Our own eyes still fill sometimes with the tears Mandela was no longer able to shed. May those tears become for us the eyes of God, lenses through which we can glimpse the city of God, and so begin to build it right here. That city where justice shall flourish in his day, and fullness of peace forever.